The PMC, Pennsylvania Military College, was established in 1821 to prepare young men for entry into the armed services. The PMC was the first school to receive federal arms for training, and the cadets became renowned for their leadership, scholarship, and military service to their country. The Pennsylvania Military College eventually became our Widener University, and to this day we value its history and continually remember those before us. The Communications Department is honored to present Voices from Freedom, where alumni from the Pennsylvania Military College have the opportunity to reflect on some of their favorite memories from this pivotal point in their lives.
Hello, my name is Kyra Jones. Welcome to Voices of Freedom, where this year we will be honoring the Pennsylvania Military College Class of 1969. Today we have alumni from the Class of 1969 who will be sharing their stories about their time at the PMC. Today we have with us James L. Hogue, Danny Gascoigne, Richard S. Urban, and George M. Duke. So if you guys would introduce yourselves, please, starting with you, James.
Hi, I'm Jim Hogue, class of 69.
Danny Gascoigne, also class of 69.
Rick Urban.
And George Duke.
Alrighty, so we're going to begin with the first question, and it is, could you share with us your cadet number and tell us a little bit about yourself? So starting with you, James.
My cadet number is 209. I grew up in western Pennsylvania and came to PMC really as an invitation from a brochure I got in the mail. And spent 4 years here. Graduated in 69.
Nice. Danny?
My cadet number was 543. I grew up in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, up by Hackensack, northern Jersey. I came to PMC because I came down here on a tour with my mom, and when she saw the place, she said, "This is where you're going."
All right, Richard.
Hi, Rick Urban, from West Hartford, Connecticut originally. Studied 1 year at the University of Connecticut and thought I needed some discipline, so here I am at Pennsylvania Military College, and there was plenty of discipline.
My cadet number was 123, and I'm originally from Naugatuck, Connecticut. And I came down here on a visit, and I was escorted around by Colonel Cottee, who was alumni relations at the time, and he impressed me to the degree that I made the decision to come here.
All right, so we're going to begin with our first question, and it is, what events at the PMC were most memorable, and what was it like during your first weeks as a Rook? So, James, begin. What was it like?
First week as a Rook. Well, I don't think any of us knew what we were getting into when we came here as a freshman, but we were labeled Rooks. Our hair was all shaved off, and then we were put on the parade field in nice, comfortable wool uniforms, where we marched for hours, learning our drill and ceremonies, and then we went to the mess hall and didn't eat anything. So, that was our life as Rooks for about 6 months? Yeah, until we were recognized as upperclassmen. So I guess the thing that I remember most about that experience is just the drill and ceremonies and the constant discipline that we had by the upperclassmen to mold us into the men we were to become.
That's good. Danny?
I think memorable moments, I think there were two. I was on we were on the Pershing Rifles drill team, excuse me, and we retired 3 trophies. We won them 3 years in a row, and our senior year we retired 3 trophies. And that was pretty good. You know, it was a real accomplishment to do that.
Well, you were the trick drill team leader.
Yeah, and you were basic standard.
Basic standard, yeah.
And the other one was at the end of my sophomore year. It dawned on me, I realized that I was going to graduate on time, that I had, the academics down and everything like that. So, it was a big step. I had never expected to go to college, finish college, right. But I realized that I was gonna make it. So
that's great. Richard?
Well, as Jim said, one of the things you remember as a freshman was the constant discipline, the attention to detail, the pride of appearance, and it just touched me in a way that I knew that after, even though the hard times as a Rook, that the military appealed to me. To this day, I still love a parade and the sound of the music and the marching and the precision of a military. And it served me well in the service and also in private industry as you go out. But one thing you learn as anybody who's associated with the military, there's a brotherhood of arms, a fraternity of military men that you don't find a lot of places in the civilian environment. So, George?
There's a lot of things that come back to mind, but one of the most impressive things was that first day when we reported to PMC and with our parents. The day activities were all very cordial and very welcoming, and then the parents went home, and then that first night in the barracks was when all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
The other thing I remember, because we were the class of '69 and Vietnam was ongoing, but one of the things that I recall most vividly is marching to muffled drums. Every evening we would form in front of Old Main and then march to the mess hall in McMorland Center, and every once in a while we would get informed of a former member of the Corps who had succumbed, and the drums would be muffled and we'd march. And that's something that's been in my memory ever since.
Now, was there like one instructor that really touched you the most or gave you like the most, like, I want to say, like the most like...
Inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration.
I can remember an instructor. His name was James Cadigan. He was an Army major. He came into my room one morning as the inspection went on. My roommate was beside me at attention, and I was on the right. He walked over and looked on the desk. He saw my roommate's midterm grades. He nodded his head like this. He walked over to my desk. He looked at my grades, and he went, and he picked them up and looked at them again. He turned around, and he looked at us, and he said, "Which one of you is Hog?" And I said, "I am, sir." And he walked up this close to my face, and he said, "Cadet Hog, why are you here?" And I mumbled something like, to get an education and to get a commission in the United States Army. And he says, "With this?" And he lets it drop. And I can still see it floating to the floor out of the corner of my eye. And that changed me, because I realized if I didn't get my head out of my fourth point of contact, I wasn't going to make it.
That's true. Danny?
There were two. I was an economics major, so Professor Zaka was my, what do you call him, your counselor, and he was taught a number of the economics courses, and he was a good man, and he was helpful. He was, help you with getting your electives all lined up and everything. And then Dr. Matthews was taught psychology, and he was also the Theta Chi advisor. And he was a good man. He was a very nice fellow, and he used to have a bunch of us out to his house, and he'd feed us, and his wife was very nice and all. So those are two that I remember the most.
That's good. Richard?
Well, there, we had a military faculty that taught us the ROTC subjects, the military things, and a lot of the members of that military staff were recent returnees from Vietnam, and they had firsthand experience, and it really added a lot to the instruction when they can speak from experience and what their experiences in combat. And on the civilian side, it was in the liberal arts curriculum, and there were a lot of good instructors over there. The ones that come down, Dr. Gross, remember Dr. Gross? And there was a fellow that taught art appreciation or art history, Rolifson, he was thing, and Dr. Melzi was a language.
Foreign languages.
Taught languages. It was a very good student to teacher ratio. We had small classes, we had a lot of individual
Yes.
attention.
Yep.
And I always had the sense that the faculty wanted to see you succeed. You know,
Yes.
they would do whatever they could
Very
to
true.
get you through.
Yeah. George?
Well, there were a lot of both on the military side and on the civilian side. A lot of them that have already been mentioned. In particular, the person that comes to my mind is in the English department, Dr. Lesturgeon, who was, I thought, molded me as far as the use of the English language. And on the foreign language side, because I was a Spanish major, Spanish and political science, was Dr. Goodale. And all of the professors took a particular interest in making sure that we succeeded, and they understood the other challenges that we were facing as far as being cadets.
Yeah.
So they went out of their way, I think, to ensure that we did as best as we could.
That's really good. So we're going to jump into the next question. It is, what extracurricular activities were you involved in at the PMC? So, James, you want to begin?
Sure. Well, my main focus when I was a freshman was drilling. So I pledged the Q5 drill team, Pershing Rifles. Danny was in my class. Many hours on the pavement in back of Howell Hall. And
That's where I lived freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
And I think we started with 80 pledges, and 8 of us were selected for the team at the end. But I spent a lot of time with Pershing Rifles, and it was my main focus during the time I was here as an extracurricular activity.
Okay, Danny?
Yeah, same with me. It was pledging freshman year Pershing Rifles, and then once we made it, we still practiced every day as we went through the years, and actually that was what made us pretty good. We won a lot of drill meets competing around
That's
the country. And then I was in Theta Chi fraternity, and that was, social, fun, and kind of a break from the military. That had civilians in it as well as cadets.
That's good.
So,
really
so it was good. Yeah.
Richard?
Well, I actually didn't do a lot of extracurricular activities outside of the academics. I wasn't a real strong student, but I excelled at things military for some reason. But a lot of my time was spent studying, and then as far as extracurricular, outside that was intramural activity.
yeah.
And I was telling the guys
Yeah.
last night a funny story. They always had a hard time getting people to participate in company intramurals.
Right.
And one of the hardest ones was to get people to go to swimming. And I remember as a freshman, someone says, "Urban, you're going to be in intramural swimming." And I says, "Hell, I should be in remedial swimming. I can hardly float." But they sent me over to the armory there and dove in, about choked to death in the water. But I was an intramural swimmer.
George?
I was involved in my junior and senior year in student government, and then also the yearbook. I worked on the yearbook staff, I think from sophomore year through senior year, and then I was the editor of our yearbook.
That's really good. And were any of you on an athletic team at all?
Well, Pershing Rifles, we earned letters.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and no, so we didn't. Well, the answer is yes. We earned letters, and each year we were considered a athletic type event or in that category. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it really didn't have the time to play
Yeah.
sports or anything.
Yeah.
You had to dedicate your time to the sports or what we did. Yeah.
That's good. All right, so our next question is, how well did the military program at PMC prepare you to be a leader, and what did you learn? So, James?
Well, I'm probably speaking for everybody when I say when we showed up here, I don't think any of us wanted to be here that first day, that first week, that first month. And it's completely changed in your lifestyle when you come to a military school the first year. But as we went through the training, and as we learned discipline, and as we learned how to apply that, our life started to change, and our character started to change. We started thinking differently as far as what were important things in life. But the military that I spent 24 years in, it prepared me. Really, I can't even tell you how well. It just brought the discipline. It brought the priorities, how to set priorities, and how to lead. You know, it's easy to say you need to lead, but it takes the time to learn how to do that.
Exactly.
And we learned how to do that when we were in PMC.
Yeah.
Danny?
I think everybody will say discipline, not just the physical discipline, but the discipline to make priorities and to organize yourself, and especially organizing time for studying and getting that into your head that it's necessary, and then actually doing it. And I was a couple of years in the Army, and then when I got out, I was in industry. And as I moved up and up, things like loyalty, teamwork, those things that were very important. And as you never like to say you're getting older, but as I got older and I would be in jobs where I had a number of people working for me, I always tried to teach instead of being the boss. You have to teach them,
Yes, so true.
and you learn that loyalty and teamwork and discipline and persistence, and that's what I took away from this school.
That's great. Richard?
Yeah, it's sound like a broken record, but you can't overemphasize the importance of discipline, and it served me well in the military. How to manage stress in stressful situations.
Right. Yeah.
How to be a leader. What it took to be a good leader. Putting your subordinates ahead of your own needs. And,
Sure.
it was good. When I went into private industry after the military, I was hired. The company was run by a retired major general, and he said, "Well, Rick, when I hire employees, I look for three qualities in an individual." And he said, leadership, leadership, and leadership.
Yes.
And it's how to deal with people was a very
Very, very important.
good lesson I learned here.
Yeah. George?
I think that the interactions between individuals and recognizing what makes a good leader and recognizing what doesn't. I think that one of the things that was imparted on us, especially during our freshman year, was how to follow. Because you have to learn how to follow before you can start giving orders. And I spent 20 plus years in the military, and the principles that I learned here, I think, held me well through my career. And then when I left the military and went into education, the part about teaching, I think, became very important. Even in the military, you have a responsibility to teach your subordinates as well as lead them.
Okay. So tying off of that, was there a defining moment in your life while you were at the PMC at all? Gee.
I'm trying to read the rest of the question. Well, I don't know that there was a defining moment. There were a lot of defining moments in my life at PMC. We all knew that Vietnam was, upon graduation, we were probably going there, and a number of us did. Following that, so I think when we were here, especially our junior and senior years, we were thinking about that in the horizon. We knew that we'd have to do some things before that, but we knew that Vietnam was probably where we were headed. I was actually excited about going to Vietnam, so when I graduated and went through the infantry school at Benning, I went on to airborne school and the 82nd, and then I volunteered to go to Vietnam. So I basically fulfilled what I thought would be what I would be doing later on. But the defining moments, I think you have a lot of defining moments in your life that mold you and direct you to where you're headed.
Danny?
Well, I think that you're right. There was a lot of defining moments here. Each phase of the college career had some defining moments. John Finn, remember him? He was his third year when we were all in the same company as freshmen. And John Finn outlined a few defining moments in life for us when he used to beat the living hell out of it. If you're out there, John, good. How are you? I hope you're doing well. And then before I mentioned, at the end of my sophomore year, that was a big defining moment because I was over the hump. I knew I was going to do well and get out and yeah. So I'd say those are the defining ones. But every year there were things that went on. Yeah.
It's really good. Richard?
Well, I think probably the best defining moment for me was when I finally realized I was going to graduate. I struggled academically through the first 3 years, but senior year finally caught on. And like I said, when it came to academics, I wasn't a 3-star guy like George here, and I had a hard time, but I excelled at things military, and making rank each year was sort of a milestone when you came out on the promotion list for the next year, and it was great.
George?
In my freshman year, I applied to transfer out of PMC.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I was accepted at a school that I had originally intended to go to. So this was my second acceptance. And I kept it all very quiet.
Yes, you did.
And I was planning on disappearing. In other words, leaving that summer. And then when the Corps regathered in September, I wouldn't be part of it. But there were a lot of things that were going on that freshman year, and towards the end, when I started realizing that where I needed to be was here at PMC, because of the camaraderie and the relationships that I had built with my classmates, and all of the other inherent things that you learn while you were here. And so I made the decision to stay.
You made the right decision. All right, so tying off to what James said, the next question is, how did the great social changes and unpopularity of the war in Vietnam impact you while you were at the PMC? So, James.
The Vietnam War, of course, was going on while we were here all our years. And as George had mentioned, we heard muffled drums as we went to the mess hall sometimes when we lost one of our own. I think it just basically made me more determined to graduate and to serve in the military. When I came here my first year, I wasn't even clear that was the right career path for me. And then as I moved on to my second year, I started to think, well, this might be where I'm supposed to be. And then on through the next 2 years, I realized it was where I was supposed to be. The Vietnam War was, for some that experienced it at different places, it had different impacts on them. It made them negative. For me, it made me more positive about being in the military and fighting for my country.
Excellent. Danny?
Here at school, it was funny that there was dramatic changes going on in the country. But here at school, if there was any unrest or I don't remember, I remember one time, I think, when civilian students might have had some sort of anti-war thing. But overall, I remember probably being pro-war, and it was knocked into our head. And I was really looking forward to when I went into the service, you know. I thought God had sent me to end the conflicts, you know. But yeah, so.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Yeah. Here, it was a nice, I really thought it was a nice gel of civilians, and I never really had a problem with the whole civilian school. Some guys said, well, you know, it ought to stay all cadet. I thought it was a nice combination, you know, so it was good. Yeah.
Richard?
Well, PMC was, during the Vietnam era, we were still under the draft, and there were student deferments. But to maintain a student deferment, you had to maintain a graduating average. As soon as you didn't have a graduating average, you lost your deferment and were subject to the draft, unless you were in the military school. So it was sort of a haven for people who had academic struggles like me. But it was good. It was, like I say, the Vietnam War was a bad time in our history, and
Yeah.
it made you think about it being here, especially with the ROTC staff we had who had just come back from Vietnam, who recant stories of firsthand action, you know.
Right.
So it was good.
George?
We were sort of isolated, insulated, probably the better word. But we were painfully reminded on occasion of the Vietnam War. There was some demonstrations that took place, but it kind of weighed on our minds, and we knew that potentially we could wind up going, especially after graduation. But it wasn't anything that really hung over us on a continual basis.
Great. All right, and our last question is, what traditions do you think should be maintained at homecoming? So, James?
We did something this year that I don't know if other classes have done, but we had a special cadet function last evening off the campus, just so that we could reconnect with some of the classmates that we had. I mean, this is an optional thing that classes can do. We decided to do that early on and invited everyone who could make it to be there. And it was a nice time of just getting together and seeing people again that we hadn't seen in 50 years.
Wow.
You know, and is that really you, George? Yeah, I mean, yeah. But it was, you know, it was just nice in a relaxed atmosphere to be able to do that.
Right.
So I would recommend that to the coming classes
Yeah.
if they would think about it, if they can do that. That would be something that they could think about. And then, of course, we've only started this weekend, so we're really just looking at events ahead. So we're evaluating them maybe a little ahead of time. But the broom drill is probably what we've all seen when we were cadets. And I can remember watching the broom drill as a freshman, and I can remember some of the old people walking down the field with brooms. And I thought two things. One is, I'll never be that old. And two is, brooms, really? This is, and you know, but that's a tradition that goes way, way back. And I just think that's something that really needs to be kept as part of the homecoming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for all military. Yeah.
Definitely. Danny?
I would say the broom drill also, and the only other thing is I would say that, and when I see my kids and other young folks that have gone to college, they don't have anywhere near the thought process of coming back like we do, you know, or they don't have the traditions, or they don't have the spirit for their school,
Right.
like I know I have, you know, and it's sad because these traditions will stop. There's only 4 classes after us, and so the traditions will stop and then just disappear like everything else. That broom drill is significant. There's a man in the audience out there who is from the class of '54.
Wow.
So he's here for his 65th reunion. I mean, you know, and that really takes something. And,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'd say the broom drill is probably that's the most important visual.
Yeah,
thing that happens.
I agree. Richard?
Yeah, I'll just echo what my classmates said, the broom drill, the tradition. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
I mean, the civilian schools don't seem to have that class bond that the military class.
Definitely.
I don't know what it is. Again, I attribute it to what I call the brotherhood of arms, the people who wear the uniform and serve the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
George?
What more can I say? I think that the broom drill is an inherent part of Widener University's history, and definitely part of PMC's history.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
even when The Last of Us has gone, I think that it would fare well if Widener were to continue the broom drill.
Now, Kyra, there's one other thing that has to be added here.
Yeah.
The museum
Yes.
is a
Definitely.
very big part of our history.
Exactly.
And Ron Romanowitz does a big job in handling that. And
Yes.
so That should always stay.
Always.
You know, and you should make contributions every year.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We really do appreciate it. Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you to our panelists for sharing their stories about their time at the PMC. We really appreciate your willingness to share your stories that are the root of what is Widener University today. We hope that you enjoyed this year's Voices of Freedom. Join us again next year where we hear the stories from the class of 1970.
The PMC, Pennsylvania Military College, was established in 1821 to prepare young men for entry into the armed services. The PMC was the first school to receive federal arms for training, and the cadets became renowned for their leadership, scholarship, and military service to their country. The Pennsylvania Military College eventually became our Widener University, and to this day we value its history and continually remember those before us. The Communications Department is honored to present Voices from Freedom, where alumni from the Pennsylvania Military College have the opportunity to reflect on some of their favorite memories from this pivotal point in their lives.